Hi, it's Glenn McQueenie, and thanks for joining me on my 25-minute Success Series podcast. Today, we have a pretty cool guy who I've known for a long time, and we're joined today by Roy Cleeves. How you doing, Roy?
I'm doing wonderful, thanks.
Good. Thanks for joining me. And just for those listening here, Roy Cleeves runs the CC Realty Group with Keller Williams Golden Triangle Real Estate in Kitchener, and he's got another expansion team in Burlington. And what I'm excited to talk to Roy about today is his whole rent to own niche, because I think it's such a great niche market. So, Roy, can you maybe just, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then just tell me where you are in your business right now, what it looks like now, and then we'll kind of see where you want to go with everything.
Yes, for sure, Glenn. It'll be my pleasure. So I'm in my 15th year as a real estate person, and I'm a broker. And I do have a team of seven at Keller Williams Golden Triangle Realty, plus myself licensed and two admin. And then I have an expansion team I've just started in Burlington where I have an expansion partner there, and we're looking to hire more people there. And throughout 2017, we were able to do 175 transactions, which was wonderful. And it
Right.
was actually the best year ever for me. So that's wonderful for me and my team. And we plan to get to 200 transactions in the Kitchener-Waterloo market in 2018, and to do at least 50 transactions in the Burlington market. And a specific portion of those will be rent to own, which is what I specialize in. And I thank you for bringing attention to that.
Yeah.
So,
So before we get into what a rent to own is, and just for those listening, they don't really understand what the concept of an expansion team is. So can you just maybe just tell us quickly what an expansion team is?
yes, for sure. So Keller Williams has a wonderful way of opening our eyes to doing more business, and one of those ways is an expansion team, whereby we take the success we've been able to do in one marketplace, and we take it to where we have another office, and we partner up with what we call an expansion partner there, and then we put in the systems and the models to build another team in that location and create the same sort of success. So that's what an expansion team is, and it's a pleasure to be able to have started one in 2017 there.
That's great because there's people who rent to own in Kitchener, and there's going to be people who rent to own in Burlington, right? And probably rent to own in Hamilton, in London, and in every possible city across North America and even the world, right? So I mean, I think this is really the beginning of almost like your own rent to own expansion franchise that you've got.
That's a very good way to put it. And rent to own is becoming more and more popular, and I think it'll only get more popular with the stress test that the government has required that people do for their mortgage coming up in January 2018.
Hmm.
So, if it's good for you, Glenn, I'll explain what a rent to own is
Yeah,
and why it's popular now.
for sure.
So, a rent to own is basically we have investors that like the idea of buying a property for a tenant that would like to own that property, but at this particular moment cannot get a mortgage. Yet they have the income to support it. They just don't have usually the capability to get the mortgage, usually because of a blemish on their credit from something that's happened in the past. So we put together this investor and a tenant, and the investor will buy the house. The tenant will pay the going monthly rent for the mortgage, plus they'll pay a little bit extra each month to go towards down payment and to create a good positive cash flow for the investor. And then we put a plan where they will buy this property 3 years down the road from the investor, and the investor gets the increase in value of the property, and we place that generally at 5% per year because we feel that's something that's very achievable. And if it goes higher, then that's a benefit to the tenant because they've actually got a property that's worth more than what they're going to pay for it in 3 years. And if it goes a little bit lower, at least the investor has a locked in number that they know they're going to work towards.
Right. So it's a locked-in, guaranteed price up front that doesn't change irrespective of how the market goes.
That's correct. And the fact that they pay a little bit extra each month helps them save towards it, because a lot of times another issue that comes up is that they don't have the down payment. They might even have good credit, but they're not able to save a down payment, and this makes it a forced savings for them.
Right. So how did you get into this niche?
Well, I happened to run into a client of mine, and his name is Thomas Wong. And Thomas Wong had studied this with Robert Allen, who's known for writing books on real estate.
Hmm.
It became his specialty. So Thomas Wong was kind enough to invite me to understand this process and to invest with him in some rent to owns that he was already doing and taking part of. And that was back in 2008. And I could see how successful this was, and it actually helped good people that, maybe they tried a business and the business failed, so they have this blemish on their credit from, a business failure. Yet they now are reestablished, but they need that time to be able to buy the home because their credit needs time to repair. And I could see how this would help people and how it would be good not only for investors, but also for those tenants, those people that needed a home.
That's amazing. So how do you currently lead generate for these people? How do you get your message out?
We do it in a number of ways. We do get a great response through the internet. We have a rent2ownkitchener.com site that brings us a lot of leads. I also advertise in the Homes Plus magazine, which is, an older way of advertising because it's print. However, it seems most effective for the rent to own. It seems to be, those people that are tenants tend to pick it up and have a look at the homes that they'd like to buy in the future. And then they come across my ad with the option to do a rent to own now. And of course, we also have referrals from mortgage people, because mortgage agents know that they cannot get this person a mortgage right now. So I've reached out to a number of mortgage agents. And we also put signs up with our listings, particularly ones that are in, a first time home buyer price range, because they
Mhm.
actually work best for a rent to own. So we'll put a sign there that says this home's also available for rent to own.
Right. So what would a typical transaction, like what would a price be on each, like what's your kind of first time buyer buying this place? And can you just tell me a bit about the economic model, how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So, for example, one that I recently did was in the $350,000 price range. And that's the price that we can buy it at today. So, when we add 5% cumulatively each year for 3 years, that means the tenant would buy it from us for 405,000 approximately 3 years later. So you can see the difference there that the investor is going to make.
Hmm.
Now, also at the same time, because the investor takes a mortgage on it and the mortgage is getting paid down each month, I think it worked out to roughly another $22,000 or so that would be paid down in the mortgage. So that's the equity gain that the investor is getting. And then we work it out that the tenant put down 5,000 up front so that they have some money in the game. And then they also paid an extra, I think in this case it was about an extra $600 each month over and above the going rent to go towards the down payment, so that they would save up enough that when they came to buy it 3 years later, they would have approximately 7% down, so they could do 5% as a first time buyer in this case, and then
Hmm.
also have a little left over to pay any legal fees and that kind of thing.
Right. And then what would the rent be? Like what's a market rent for something like that?
Market rent on something like that here would be 1,500 a month.
Right.
So
So
with
they
the
basically, go ahead.
600 a month, now they're paying 2,100 in total.
Right. And then does the owner pays the taxes and water probably, and the tenant would pay all the other utilities? Is that how it works?
Yes, exactly. Tenant pays all of the utilities and the owner pays the taxes. And if it's a condominium, they would also pay, the owner would also pay the condo fees.
Right. And then, so when the owner is financing this, how much are they putting down typically?
We always calculate it with 20% down. Um, Sometimes they'll put a little bit more. It is up to the choice of the investor. But if they put 20% down, we've calculated that generally it will work out to approximately 30% return on the money they put down by the time they cash out when the tenant rather buys the house from them 3 years later.
And that's 30% per year for 3 years.
Yeah, 30%
Yeah.
for each year. Yeah.
That's pretty good, isn't it?
Where else do you make that much money, right? And you're protected. The investor's protected because he owns the property. And of course, the other side of it is you have a tenant. So will the tenant ruin the property? That's what people worry about when they think of rentals and tenants. And the reality is, when someone has in their mind that they're going to buy this property, this is their home, they're generally improving the property and making it better and taking way better care of it than if it's in their mindset that, oh, it's just a rental. I don't own it.
Right. I mean, who better to take care of a property than when they know it's going to be their home in a couple of years, right? So,
Yes, and we've had the case, like every rent to own doesn't work out. The ones that have not worked out is usually when the family is split up. So
right.
we always really want to make sure, we do want to make sure it's a win-win for everyone. So we ask the tenants, are you on solid ground? Is your marriage very solid? And even doing that, there's the odd one where, they still split up because things change over time and there is a 3-year time horizon. So one of the ones we had where they split up, the people had improved the house so much that when we sold it, we actually got more than the anticipated price at that time, and we refunded the difference to the tenants, each 50%, so that they got back some money they put in because we all benefited.
Right. So it's like a win-win-win. So if that happens, say after 2 years, do they get that extra $600 a month back too? Is that like a lump sum to them, or what happens?
They
Like,
do.
do they that was building towards their down payment? Does that go back to them too?
That's part of the program, is that they do not get those funds back. And the reason for that is because the way the program is structured is that they're buying it direct from the investor at the three
Right.
year mark. So there's no additional fees other than lawyer's fees at that time, just a regular closing cost. However, if they don't complete, then the investor now has to hire a realtor to sell that property. And
Oh, I see.
basically,
Okay.
those funds then go to pay for that expense.
I get it. Okay. So it sounds like it's a pretty cool win-win-win deal for everybody, and as long as everyone just says what they, or did what they said they were going to do when they were going to do it, and the way they were going to do it, then everyone wins in this deal.
Exactly. Yes, we've had many that have been, very successful. And most recently, with our market here in Kitchener going up substantially in the beginning of 2017, values went up 40% over 2016. And
Wow.
even 2016 was 16% over 2015. So these numbers are way above the 5% that we had calculated each year. And the rent to owns that we had completing in 2016 and in 2017, those tenants were absolutely amazed when they got the value of their home compared to what they had to pay for it.
Yeah, that's so amazing. It's a lot easier to get a mortgage too, right? 7% down when your house is worth when you've already got 100,000 or 200,000 in equity built in already.
Exactly. It makes it so much better for them. And then they say, you know what, I'm so glad that I did this and I didn't wait, because their other option was they could just go and rent for 3 years and then buy it when their credit is fixed.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, but and we know what happens there. It's like a lot of times that people won't have the same discipline to put the $600 away or to save for the down payment, and so then they just become renters a lot longer than they thought. And then imagine if they were just renting, and didn't do this program, and now it's like, okay, I'm ready to buy, and prices are up, 16% over 1 year and 40% over the next, and now they're even just marked right out of the market. So it's almost your program is really a hedge against the market for anybody who wants to do it.
So yes, it works extremely well when the market continues to climb. And according to CMHC and Genworth, they're saying that they expect our markets to continue to climb because the demand is going to continue to outstrip supply for the next 10 years, is what they've said at the most recent meetings I've been to.
Right. Okay. So, where do you want to bring this business now? What's your next step? Where do you want to go?
Well, I guess I want to continue to offer it to even more people, and that I need to figure out how to reach out to more of those mortgage brokers. I think would be one of the best avenues because it really is something that we offer for all of Ontario. We're licensed for all of Ontario, and it pretty much all of Ontario makes sense. We don't want to go somewhere where we believe the market's going to go down because it doesn't work well when the market goes down. However, the majority of Ontario is expected to continue to rise in values, and as long as that's the case, we'd like to offer it pretty much all across Ontario.
Okay, that's awesome. And how do you? We already talked about how you lead generate now. How do you think you're going to have to lead generate to bring this right across Ontario?
I think we're going to have to get to more of the mortgage brokers because when I look at where most of my leads have come from, even though we get a great number through the internet, an awful lot of those ones think that you just pay regular rent and you get to own the house at the end. They don't understand the program, and when we explain it for them, it's not right for them. But a mortgage broker who has someone who has a blemish on their credit knows they can be in good shape in 3 years. That's a qualified lead. So I think our avenue needs to be to reach out to mortgage agents.
Okay. So I'm going to give you three, I think, really cool ideas, just adding on to what you just said there, because I think they might solve a bit of this gap, right? One, I would strongly suggest that from every person that you've actually done this to who's really happy, is if you could text them and ask them to call in to and leave a voicemail of basically a testimonial, right? Of this is my story, within 2 minutes, right? I find a lot of times in real estate we get a lot of thank you notes from our clients, and then if we go to put a camera in front of their face, they just freeze up, right? There's nothing. So a great way to get around that actually is to have them to leave a voice recorded message of what it was like, which you upload to YouTube. And what you can do is you can even run graphics with it. But I think it's a great way for you to be gaining the authority of third-party opinion of what you guys are doing, because I think what you're doing is amazing. And I think the more that, people don't always have the time to read it. A lot of it's video now, so you can put your testimonials on your site, but there's nothing better than hearing that person's real voice talking about how amazing it was to deal with you guys and how you guys kept your word. And you imagine the story they're telling, right? Well, I bought this place for $350 3 years ago, and when we closed off the deal, the property was now worth $550, and so I've really made $200,000 for really doing nothing apart from just paying rent on this rent-to-own program. There's nothing more compelling than that for the next person who's thinking about doing it to really get excited about it. Does that make sense?
Agreed. That'd be great.
Yeah, and then I think the second thing would be, what if you produced a book, right? Whether you go to 90-minute books or whether you get a big book. But I think the easiest one would be, what are the 10 questions you get asked the most about from mortgage brokers about this program? And could you do a hour and a half voice recording, at 90-minute books, and publish it? And I would probably call it the Mortgage Broker's Guide to Rent-to-Own Properties, where they can be handing that out to all of their customers, where now they become the authority recommending you all the time.
Wow, I love that idea.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and now you can also send this to every single mortgage broker in the province, and who's not going to read that if I'm a mortgage broker? Why would I not want to read that article?
Yeah, that's That would be excellent. That's a
Or
great way to get their attention.
yeah, and what if you were to almost like they could buy the book off you for $5 each or $10 each or whatever? You could put it on Amazon. You could, there's lots of ways you can get this out, but you could also create a Facebook page group called the Mortgage Broker's Guide to Rent-Own Properties, where now they come as mortgage brokers, and all you do is talk about testimonials, and um, you could even do like a webinar on this for them, using like Zoom.ca or one of those other video products where everyone can join on. You got a whiteboard, and you can just do the math and show them how this works.
That's a great idea because it is nice when you show the math and you lay it all out on a whiteboard. It does really help people understand.
Yeah, I mean, as you were explaining it to me earlier in this call, you're kind of like, well, this is an absolute no-brainer, win-win-win for everybody. So the only difference between your target market and them being a customer right now is the information that's required in almost the first 5 or 10 minutes of this call. And you could send this podcast out to all your mortgage people, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
Right. The other thing I would do is I would go direct to consumer, and I would do something called the 10 secrets to renting to own your own property. And again, it's the same model. It's the 10 questions that people ask all the time. Like, what, what's involved? Is this a scam? How does the program work? What's a typical model look like? Like, there is a series of those, questions that you get. Like, I mean, is there 10 common questions you get asked about this program all the time?
I'm sure there is. I could put that together for sure.
Right. And then again, you can record that and then put that out as a book. And also, when you got the book, you become the authority, right? So it's a second positioning in marketing on authority where people go, oh my God. And then when people ask you, it's like, well, what do you know about it? You're like, hey, I wrote the book on this, right? It's so funny.
Yeah, actually, I love that idea because it really does say you're the authority.
It does, right? And then couldn't you also go online? Like, you could do seminars about this, but I think the seminar model is slightly changing. Some people will show up to seminars, but a lot of millennials are going to be online, and they will watch a YouTube video about it. And the YouTube is you explaining the program with the offer for the free download of the book, so you can capture their email address, and then you can just be dripping on them until they're ready to go. And what I would do also is almost like, not only do you have the video testimonials of all these people building up your content, so Google's picking it up, going, boy, this person's an expert. But what if you were to do it where, like, here's the the 10 best rent to owns of 2017, and you say they bought them in 2014. This was the price. This was the return for the investor. This was the return for the tenant. And if you want to be on my list of the top 10 best for 2018, give us a call and we'll get you set up right now.
Oh yeah, that is the best to show them examples of exactly how well it's worked out in the past.
Yeah, I mean, because you're already like, what an incredible public service in a way you're doing on this, right? And I don't want people listening going, "Oh my God, really, Glenn?" I'm like, I know. I mean, it's a win-win-win for people who might even just have slightly bruised credit or just haven't saved up a down payment yet. And why deny those people the chance for home ownership? And I'll tell you, on a personal level, when my parents immigrated to this country, I wish someone had told them about this rent to own, because we were renters our entire life, you know,
Oh wow.
until I think I was the first one in my family, both sides, to buy a house, right? Just because of the background we came from. So, think about all of those people right now who are sitting paying someone else's mortgage right now in a crappy apartment building that hasn't been maintained. Um, because you've got, whether it be rent controls or whatever, like they're not just spending that money anymore, right? Or they're putting in like new railings or windows because they can jack the rents up.
Yeah.
And now it becomes almost like this cause, right? It's like, you know what? It's time for you to get rid of your landlord, right? It's, why are you building wealth for your landlord when you can build wealth for yourself? And this is how ridiculously simple this is, right?
And it's so true. And there are a lot of investors, ready, willing to invest in this program because they're protected by owning the house, and they get a better tenant. And it's a nice in and out strategy for them that happens usually within 3 years. But I also wanted to mention one of my greatest successes was one that we did only for 1 year. And it was actually a client of mine who was getting a divorce, and the wife wanted to stay in the house in the neighborhood so the kids would go to the same school. She had a new boyfriend who could not come on title for a year because of his own divorce. Yet within 1 year, everything would be fine and they could have the same house she was already in. So when I recommended to her the rent to own program for 1 year so that she wouldn't have to move the kids even out of their bedrooms, she was just absolutely flabbergasted with joy and gave me the biggest hug, and we put the deal together and it worked out perfectly. And to this day, she's one of my raving fans for the program.
Oh my gosh. That's such a great story, Roy. It can be another book, right? The Divorced Parent's Guide to
Yes.
renting, to rent to own and keeping your kids in the same school district, right? Like,
Yes.
like they could be so targeted, right? And I love the other one I was just thinking about too is like I'm sure if you think about it, you're almost creating your own MLS system, right? Which is what I love about this, right? Where you get the buyers and you're matching them to the sellers, and then you're doing a third transaction basically when the buyer buys off of that seller, right?
Yeah.
What if we did the investor's guide, the 10 secrets investors need to know about rent owns?
Yeah,
Because
that
you
would.
need more capital, right? Like, I mean, if you had $1 million in capital, you could easily do, you know, at least 20 or 30 more transactions just on your own, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so if you imagine you got this lake, right? Now we have three rivers coming into it, which are your sources of leads, right? So you've got the mortgage channel because you've taught them how to do it. You've got the buyer channel, and you've got the investor channel coming in. And I think the next thing, which would be really cool to do, would be later on next year, is what if you do a tour across Ontario to different real estate offices talking about the rent to own model and just trying to find that one key person to build your pipeline to be expanding it into every area. I mean, just like in Burlington where you had to kind of turn up your lead funnel, a couple of months before you actually got in there. Like,
Yes.
couldn't you just do this every city across, Toronto, in Ontario? And if you could even make 100,000 to 200,000, per city, you get 20 of those going. That's a $4 million business right now.
Well, and it certainly would be, and it is an excellent idea because I've found that the average realtor doesn't understand rent to own. And even in
Hmm.
my own marketplace here, other realtors, even in my own office, have said, like, I know you do rent to own, Roy, and I have this person who can't get a mortgage, and can you do a rent to own for them and pay me a referral fee? And I happily do that. And
Yeah.
they could actually do it themselves, but they generally don't have the investors that are ready and understand the program, and they don't understand the program themselves. But yes, I'd be willing to share it, and it would be a good topic that I should put together, a session on to do at each of the Keller Williams offices.
Yeah, or it could be other offices too, right? Don't have to limit it. That's a beautiful thing. And then, I mean, there's another book too. Right now, it's the Agent's Guide to Rent to Owns because you're going to teach them how to do it, and none of them are going to do it, but they're going to send all their investors over to you to do it. So now you have another stream of income, right? So exciting. I
So
think you're going to be like, and you imagine if you got this big enough, you could almost you could sell this to a REIT, which is the irony of the whole thing, but you could sell this concept to a REIT or a pension fund because of the consistent earnings you're making off of it. And they'll pay you like an 8 to 12 times multiple of all this. So
yeah, that's
you're
big.
going to, yeah, I already know you're a big deal, Roy, but now you'll be an even bigger deal. So maybe I'll
Thank
get
you.
you to sign my arm next time I see you, just so you know.
Awesome.
So how was that? Did you get some good ideas?
Oh yeah, I've written them all down while we've been talking. These are great.
All right. Well, I'm excited for you, Roy. I think you're going to do like really, really well. You're already doing fantastic things and serving so many great people with this win-win outcome. And look at just how many more that you can serve, right? And
It would be great to serve more, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
so excited for you, Roy. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. It was really
Well, thank
cool.
you, Glenn. It's been my pleasure.
Okay, we'll talk to you soon, Roy.
I'll see
Okay,
you
take
soon.
care.
Bye.
Okay, bye bye.